Hi guys, so something a little bit different today. I'm actually on location with my own golf coach, Dan Whittaker, who you've probably seen in a couple of videos before. And what we're keen to keep doing is really bringing content which I would describe as, really from the very top of the tree when it comes to golf coaching, and make sure that really the correct information is getting out there, not just this recycled, generic, whether it's short game or long game stuff. Yeah. Top quality stuff. Dan works with some of the best players in the world. He travels the world to work with these players, PGA Tour players, elite England internationals, junior players at the top level, and unfortunately for Dan, he works with me. So today we're talking about my own pitching game, which is probably the weakest part of my game. Even as a professional, it's far from the case that every part of my game works well. And the reason it doesn't work well, as Dan's going to talk to you about now, is just basic technical flaws. It's not complicated stuff. Simple things that I do badly, me and Dan are working on changing, and I guess Dan's going to maybe describe a couple of those things.
Yeah. So what we've done with Chris's pitching technique, like a lot of people, has tended to get a little bit narrow. So his arms have got have actually been tending to get very much too close to his body, and he doesn't tend to pick it up too quickly. But I get a lot of people who get narrow and get very, very steep. So a lot of people are making a pitching technique a bit more like a V here. So their interaction with the floor at the bottom is very, very narrow. Okay. So it's really, really difficult to get a nice, solid, consistent contact when you haven't got a very long low point, okay? So the bottom of the arc, it needs to be longer to be pitching very, very consistently, okay? It's called a flat spot. So we want to get a long flat spot where the club is interacting with the ground for a long period of time. Now, when you get a narrow flat spot, it means that you've got very little interaction with the ground. Support, obviously we tend to see with Chris here that it tends to come in a little bit steep. It can then shoot off, and actually ends up getting them quite thin because it's coming in steep, so the club's descending into the ball for a long time. We don't get it coming out in the right area of the face, so it's tending to get a different launch, different spin every single time, so the trajectory is never going to be the same.
Well, I'll just jump in and just. Well, what that means is some of the shots are very, very good, and with the full swing, a lot of guys we teach, sometimes you get lucky, and sometimes you all get lucky and you hit the middle, and you can kid yourself that what you're doing is correct. Well, what good golf coaching is really all about is giving you a massive percentage increased chance in actually executing a good shot, even if the swing wasn't perfect. And with my current technique, if I'm a bit nervous, the lie's a bit tight, I'm playing in a tournament, I don't fancy the shot, my technique tends to come unstuck, unless it's easy on these really good lies, but when you get a slightly worse lie, again comes even more unstuck.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about how we're going to change it then.
So what we did is, first thing we did, we got more like an elongated U here, so you can see that this is creating a much longer bottom to the arc here. So rather than this little narrow bit, we've got a much longer spot at the bottom, so the club's interacting with the ground and the ball for a longer period of time.
So to just give you a visual of what we mean by that, we don't want the club looking like it's coming down like this. It will look and feel like it's more that sort of emotion through the ball, enabling me to feel what the bounce is doing rather than trying to almost hit down on the ball too much, which again, some of these magazine articles, YouTube stuff, bad coaching, get super steep, not really how you want to do it if you want to increase your percentage chance of making a nice clean contact.
Agreed 100%. So what we did is, first thing we've done is we've got the arms and the body matching, so we've just got we look at the chest is the engine. So the engine starts to move, so it's a little turn of the shoulders, which we got Chris to do. So they're both matching one another in terms of arcs. The arms and the club are just going on a bigger arc than the body, but they're moving at exactly the same speed. Now that's the most important bit for everything, because that's going to then mean that you're going to be very consistent in terms of the delivery of the golf club to the ball every single time. So that's both back and then through. So what we were doing is, we got the chest and everything to turn back together, and on the way through we just added a little bit of hip bump, the same as you would do on your full swing, and then let the chest and the body rotate through, so the chest will carry the loft through to the end of the follow through, okay? And you're trying to make sure that the arc is nice and consistent. And the other thing we did is, at the end we wanted to make sure that the right hand was underneath the golf club, so the grooves were looking back at him. Okay. Now the one other bit, we tended to see that the ball was, when he hit a good one, was popping up a little high because his contact point was actually too high on the face. Okay, it varied a lot, because sometimes, obviously I said at the start, it could thin a few. That was because he was just hitting down on it too much. So we want to get the ball coming low out the face, so that it can actually have a chance of climbing up the grooves, increasing the spin rate. So what we did is got the arc nice and wide and shallow, and then increased then got the handle to be able to raise just a little through impact, just as a byproduct of those hips going forward. It's allowed us to hit it low in the face, which then gives us the low launch, but because the ball's going to run up the grooves to align itself back to the centre of gravity of the club, it's then going to be spinning a lot. So it's one of those impressive shots that you see really top-notch players being able to hit. This low burning wedge shot that grabs on the second bounce and just checks instantly.
I don't see that very often. So obviously, you know, backspin, it's one of those you type into YouTube backspin and all these crazy videos come up. To create backspin, you do not crunch down on top of the golf ball. And what Dan's trying to say is, what we're hoping to do is if we contact the club in the right point, if I come in a little bit closer here, it's actually going to roll up the face a little bit, imparting more backspin onto the ball. Not only is it going to be a better shot, and as Dan's saying, we're looking for that kind of 1-2 stop.
Yes.
That's what looks good, and that's what hopefully now Dan's going to show me how to do.
Okay, so what we're going to see now with Chris is, so he's going to be stood here, so he's going to be getting it nice and wide, so he's going to be turning the chest. Okay, you can see the arms are perfect extension, and his hands, the centre of his hands, are in line with his sternum. And on the way through, everything's going to be moving through together, the hips is going slightly forwards, and then at the end of the follow through here, the right hand is underneath the left. The grooves are looking back at Chris, and his chest is pointing upwards, so the chest is carried through the loft, and there's a little bit of weight just over the outside edge of the front foot. So Chris is now going to execute one of these shots for us.
So hopefully, I don't know if you can pick that up on the microphone, just a clean contact.
Very, very clean contact. It was really quite a nice trajectory on it, and this was gone like 30 yards, and this is the perfect, you know, shot for this 30-yard range. I get a lot of players who are really good in the 80, 90, 100-yard bracket, but aren't very good at the 30, 40, 50-yarder, because this is where the technique is shown up the most, because we end up decelerating or trying to accelerate the wrong parts of the body to execute the shot. Just seen there, Chris struggled with this one the same, just through inconsistency in the technique, whereas you can get away with it at 80, 90 yards. The speed is more like a full golf shot, and more speed is applied.
I think what I would say, I mean, it's probably about 7 feet from the pin. I didn't feel like I played it perfectly, but the whole point of what we're trying to say is my percentage chance of a good shot, because I'm not coming down too steep, still a good result from probably a 7 out of 10 effort. Again, a 10 out of 10 would have really just felt really super crisp off the face, but I'd have been happy with the result for what wasn't a perfect execution. And that, again, to stress, golf isn't about your 1 in 10 perfect shots. It's about 9 out of 10 being really good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more then about how we can go on and improve this pitching technique. Yeah?
Okay, so now the only thing that I would like to see a little bit more here from Chris now would be is if he just takes it back. What we're going to show you is how we're just going to apply a little bit more speed to it, so increase the spin. So what we see is we want the hips, and we really want the hips and the chest to come through towards me quite quickly. We want the right hand to be what I call gathering the shaft. So because you're not driving forwards a lot, there's a bit more momentum, inertia in this club. So from here, that right hand will finish a little bit more under, so the left wrist has been allowed to recut. This will then mean that Chris is able to use the bounce a little bit more. So a little drill that we did is the club would start along the floor here, and then he'll use the chest and the hips going up. And then what we'll see is that the toe is essentially climbing a wall. So it's going upwards, meaning that therefore we can still see the grooves on the face perfectly. There's been a bit of speed applied, and this left wrist is just recupped quite nicely towards the end.
A lot of amateurs who play these shots, and you know, I play with amateurs quite a lot of the guys that I teach, they struggle with the ball goes in a little bit too hot, doesn't it?
Yes.
It doesn't grab, it's just everything's a little bit too aggressive, and a lot of that has to be because this face is closing down a little bit too much, getting way too much forward shaft lean. What Dan's trying to allow me to do is really let the club do the work. And this is what Tiger struggled with a little bit.
Absolutely.
And he had his real short game catastrophes 2 or 3 months ago. It was Paul Azinger was talking about this, and he said he could fix Tiger in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
He was doing it. It was so aggressive down into it. Doesn't really work, as we've seen. So,
Chris is going to hit one more shot here for us.
Picked a bit of a worse lie there, so we'll see how we do. So again, practice swing perhaps, staying wide, through. Yeah.
Yeah.
The feeling might be for a little bit for me that almost almost like the club's overtaking your hands, which again we've been told forever and a day not to do. Perhaps maybe that is a little bit more.
I think that letting the club overtake the hands is a great thing for Chris, because he'd actually let the right hand tend to roll over and shut the face down. So for guys who've tended to have quite a shut club face coming in, working it under is a great feel. Remember, with a lot of golf things, feel and real aren't the same. So we keep an eye on that the feel hasn't been overdone, but this is a great feeling for Chris. I thought it was an even better contact.
That was really good, yeah. So again, the sensation that the left wrist, as Dan was describing, almost recupping on the way through, and I almost did feel, as Dan mentioned, that a little bit more dwell time on the face. And I think what's good, because everything's moving a lot better now, there's much less hesitancy about how good the lie is. And I think a good pitcher doesn't care. If we're really honest, a good pitcher will pitch off anything, off sand, off grass, off a completely bald lie, off a range mat. It's really of no consequence. So perhaps until you can get to that point when you can pitch off any lie and not be too worried, maybe your pitching technique isn't quite what you think it is.
Absolutely. We'd recommend that you practice off, give yourself good lies to start with, get good at the technique, then start varying it about and see whether you're able to apply that to different scenarios.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add to
that?
No,
that's it. So
good.
We're really happy with what we've achieved here today with Chris. If you'd like to see more stuff from both of us, the links to our various channels and social media down below. Chris is based at
City Point Golf Studio in central London, so a little bit more what we call fact-based coaching, using the modern ball flight analysis tool, the GC2 HMT. You get to see all of our ball flights, and again we're dealing with cold hard facts, not my opinion of what works and what doesn't, impact data, and combined with some stuff we're going to do with Dan, I like to think we're really trying to get as much quality information out there, the stuff we'd work with our top player, and a bit more aware of what's really happening. Yeah, the key information that Dan would work with his very best players on.
Absolutely. And if you'd like to visit me, I'm based here at Altrincham Driving Range in Cheshire. We're going to be more videos from the two of us coming, and watch out for them, and we look forward to speaking with you again very soon.
Cheers buddy, thank you. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.